Hello, everyone. Welcome you to Warsaw Inf- IT Days.
IT
Inform
days.
IT Days, and today with me is Piotr Jachowicz,
Hi.
and he will talk about side projects, the path of career satisfaction. He will uh, say about how prevent burnout. So, Piotr, the
Yeah, thank you very
scene
much.
is yours. Uh, and please be, I just want to remind to make ocena, make five star or better to for presentation. And Piotr, the stand is yours. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Hello, guys. I'll talk a bit about side projects, how they can make your life better, and also a bit about the possible issues with that. I'm a software engineer at A-Team, which is a freelancing company which helps freelancers to find um, jobs basically. So we'll talk a bit about the motivation, so why you might want to do side projects, what is the reasoning behind that. Then we'll talk a bit about the types of side projects, so what is it that you can actually do. Then about the long-term benefits, and also about some warnings as to how to avoid burnout and other issues that might arise from you working more. And then we'll sum up briefly. So to start off, back in 2016, I was a regular software developer. You can say I worked my 9 to 5 job in an office. My salary was decent, but it wasn't anything extraordinary. And then 2 years later, I was doing my 9 to 5 as well, but I was also doing projects as a freelancer on the side. And I was also conducting courses both in companies and for beginner level developers. So why did they happen? Why did I take those additional obligations on myself? And everything we do in life comes from a need. So you might feel the need of having a child, for example. You might feel a need of having more money to buy a car, or you might have a need to, I don't know, have more rest. So what might be those needs that push us towards those side projects? And I'll have three main things that I know from my experience. The first one, and probably the most obvious one, is financial. So basically, you want extra cash. And this might be because you have some new obligations in your life, or you might want to raise your life level, so buy a bigger or nicer flat or closer to the city center or buy a new car. Or you might have some long-term goals, such as, I don't know, traveling around the world or going on an early retirement, which is also my plan. In my case, my kid was born back in 2017, and the costs of having a child were much higher than what we have expected. So I was kind of pushed into having to do side projects in a way, but it was a good decision for myself. All right, so the next group of motivations is the need for self-development. So also in my experience, if employers look at your resume and they see that you've got 9 to 5 job and some other things that give you soft skills, that give you skills outside of your main area of expertise, they look way differently on your resume and on you as a candidate. So you might feel the need of going outside of your like area that you work on usually when you work in your company, because say you work as a software developer in a corporation, so you only work with the code that you have in your corporation. You work mostly with the frameworks that you have there, and you don't see the wider IT world, let's say. So you might want to get out of this bubble and try to learn other things, such as presentational skills or other frameworks. Maybe if you're a designer, you might want to do some front-end development as well. You can use side projects to do all of that. So, for example, if you are going into freelancing, you are and say you're a software developer, you don't only do development when you are freelancing. You are a more generic person. You have to work on infrastructure as well. Maybe you have to work on some hosting solutions. You also have to take some of the role of a project manager to work on the scope management with the client, because you work closer to the client than you usually do in a corporation. And also clients in freelancing tend to be more touchy when it comes to going over the budget. So you have to negotiate the budget as well. So you have to talk money. This doesn't happen that much when you are just working as a developer in a corporation. On the other hand, if you do public speaking, so what I'm doing right now, or doing some courses, maybe you work on your presentational skills, you work on your body language. If you teach people how to program or do designs or test, you have to also work on your knowledge transfer. So basically, to transfer those skills to them. And what this gives you is if you go to those recruitment meetings with employers, you can present yourself much better, so it's easier to land a job for sure. Also, it's easier to negotiate a salary if you've got good soft skills. And apart from that, if you go to meetings at your company when you actually work, it's easier to land your ideas. It's easier to pitch your ideas to the other team members so that your ideas get implemented and you shine more while you work. So this is the development, let's say, motivation. The third one, which a bit ties into this one, is what I call a need for excitement or a need to avoid boredom. And what I mean by this is when I was working at the very beginning of my career, I actually found it hard to stay at one workplace for longer than a year or so. And the reason behind this is if you think of how a project usually looks like, you join a project and your learning curve is very steep because you just start, you learn a lot of new skills, everything is new, like every day a new thing you can learn. But after some time, the project inevitably enters a phase which I call maintenance, or you do bug fixes, or you wait for the business to scope out the next project. And of course, from the business perspective, this is important, it's needed. However, I always feel that my skills are kind of stop being developed. I kind of stop learning new things. I get a little bored, you can say. And I start looking for something else because I want to still, use my full capacity. And side projects can actually help you with that. Because if you think of side projects, be it courses or freelancing or your own application maybe, if you've got an uptime, so a more intensive time in your main job, you can actually slow the pace on your courses, maybe take less courses or take no courses if you don't have any more capacity. However, if you've got the downtime in the main job, you can actually intensify the work on your side project. So maybe go back to this application you tried to write some time ago, or take on more hours as a freelancer, for example. So this helps a lot. Since I started taking up side projects, I stopped moving jobs as often. I mean, I started staying in one place for 3-4 years and not a year or lower than that. Okay, so we know the possible motivations, avoiding boredom and raising your skills and of course money, but what actually might you do as a side project? And I would like to go from those that need the least commitment to those that are full-fledged part-time jobs. And the first group I would like to talk about is what I call pro publico bono. And what I mean by this is you won't get cash from this, at least not in the short term. So those are things you can do to raise your skills, to better your resume, but don't exactly pay you right here, right now. And the first activity you can do from this group is contributing to open source projects. So we use every day open source tools. I think every one of us, at least if you are working in IT for sure. And contributing to those projects is for once, it's a way of giving back to the community and also giving some of your strength to this very big endeavor that is open source. But apart from that, it also gives you some skills you can learn and be put on your resume. Because think of it this way: if you're a beginner developer, how hard it might be for you to get a job at Google or Facebook or Microsoft, so any of those very well-known brands in the industry. It might not be so easy. However, if you want to go to Elasticsearch or Vue or Ansible or one of those large, well-known open source libraries, it might be easier for you to contribute there and for your contribution to get accepted, and you can actually put those well-known names on your resume. Apart from that, there are senior developers there that will review your code and or your contributions, and you can learn from them on how it actually should look like, so you can raise your skills as well. If you have an idea for creating a tool, or you have a tool you wrote for yourself, for your work, to help you with some projects of yours, you can also put it as an open source project. What this gives you is you get more visibility, and also people might come in to help you make the product better, make the library better. And if it gains traction, there are also ways to monetize it in the long run. If you are interested in doing open source work, there is an opensource.guide webpage where you can find answers to your questions, how to find a project, how to do your first contribution. Also, if you don't feel like doing code or doing anything like technical there, you can also start with doing documentation, fixing typos, or doing translations. Around 30% of contributions are actually documentation contributions. So this is a good place to start. All right, so this was the open source, and the other thing I want to talk about in the pro publico bono is actually going to meetups or organizing meetups. So meetups are meetings of people who have similar interests. So it might be a generic IT meetup in your city, or it might be something more towards a group of your interests. So say React or Vue or frontend or mobile applications or design or software testing. So you can just find a meetup that suits your needs. You can go there, you can listen to the speakers. And then if you feel like it, if you have some time, you can go to the organizers and propose that you might help with the organization of such a meetup. What this gives you is you get your organization skills. Again, you can put it on your resume, so potential employers will see that you do something outside of just working as a coder or designer or tester. And also it gives you a big visibility when it comes to building your network. So you meet a lot of people with similar interests from your area on those meetups, which might come in handy later on. You might meet people that are, let's say, further on the road than you. They might help with landing a job, for example. So this is a good way to build this network of professionals. Also, if you feel like it, if you have a subject that you feel strongly about, you might propose to speak on such a meetup and present your subject. This also helps with the soft skills we mentioned earlier, so presentational skills, body language, etc. Okay, so this was the pro publico bono, but what if you actually want to earn some extra cash maybe and you have some more time in your hands? So we come into the group of side gigs. So it's like you don't want to commit to doing 4 hours every day, for example, but you have some spare time and you want to do something in it, something more than just pro publico bono and actually get the financials in place. So the first idea you might want to tackle is doing courses. You might think that you need an expert level knowledge, 15 years of experience to do courses in IT. However, that's not exactly true. There are two main types of courses. You can do an expert level course at a company where, yes, I would agree, you need some expert level knowledge. You need a lot of self-confidence to go there and the subjects are more advanced. You need more time to prepare. However, the money is much better there. But on the other hand, you've got the bootcamps or courses for beginners. And in my experience, if you have worked with technology for half a year or a year, you probably already have enough knowledge to create or talk about it on a bootcamp. Because the skills that you need to give those people are very basic. They just need to learn anything. They need to start working on something. They don't need to do a deep dive into advanced subjects or very complicated ones. And also what bootcamps give you, apart from obviously the cash that you can get from there and all the presentational skills, knowledge transfer we mentioned earlier, I'm an electrical engineer. I mean, I've finished electrical engineering in Warsaw University of Technology. So I have no CS degree at all. I have no education in CS. So what I found in bootcamps that I started doing after having 3 years of experience was that I actually built the foundation of my knowledge, of my skills, those that I didn't learn during the university. Because if you want to teach people something, you need to have a much better understanding than just working on it and looking for answers on Stack Overflow. So this is the unknown or maybe not so obvious benefit of doing bootcamps or any other type of trainings. If you don't feel like talking to people or you want to scale your courses much more, you can also go to doing online courses. And those, as I mentioned, scale much better because you can do them once and then as many people as you can get to buy them, they can just watch them without you taking part in it. You can try to do it either via a platform, so say Udemy, for example, where you just upload your course and it will get marketed by Udemy and they will take care of all the infrastructure. But if you have a way of marketing your own products, maybe you have a blog, maybe you have some Instagram account that has many followers, I don't know, then you can actually try to do your own page and do your own pipeline of selling those courses because Udemy takes quite a large portion of your income for themselves. So those are the two options you have. Of course, you can mix and match. You can do some on-site trainings, touch of talking to people, which I do, for example, or you can do some online trainings for scale and just mix those two if you feel like it. Somewhere between those courses and the pro publico bono is what I'm doing right now, so public speaking, mainly on conferences. And the reason behind this being in side gigs and not the pro publico bono is because, well, in theory, it's possible to get paid for public speaking, although you do have to be a very well-known speaker and have a good reputation and like be a globally recognizable figure, probably. But this is not about this mostly. The reason behind it being a side gig is like conferences are a bit of a higher tier affair than just meetups. They happen less often and they are much more global, let's say, than a meetup is. And I think that this is the best way to show your expertise on a given subject. If you have talked about something on a conference and put it in your resume, you do show that, hey, I'm an expert in this area. And also from all of the activities we talked about, I think that speaking on conferences is the one that gives you the most satisfaction. So before talking, it gives some stress, but then after you actually deliver the talk, there's nothing else that gives so much satisfaction in delivering your activity, let's say, in the very end. If you feel like speaking, if you have any subjects that are very close to your heart, you feel strongly about, you like talking about them, I would highly suggest trying to forge them into a talk and then go to conferences and speak actually in front of a public. And to help you with that, there is this book called TED Talks. If you don't know TED, it's an organization that's standing for Technology, Education, and Design. And those guys created this organization back in 1984, and they are all about creating the best possible high-level quality talks on conferences and generally public speaking. So you can have a look at this book. I used it to prepare my first talk, and it's a like gold mine of knowledge. And also you can go to the TED webpage as well as download their mobile application, and they do give access to like loads of good talks by professional speakers who do deliver very high quality talks, which you can learn from basically. Okay, so we did go through the side gigs. Let's now try to talk about the part-time jobs, which means you actually work at least 4 hours a day or 20 hours in a week in total. And I'll start with freelancing, and the reason why freelancing is in part-time and not side gigs is because I'm a software developer, and in software development, I find that almost always clients want to upscale at least to 20 hours per week. Just because doing software development for less than that, you can't do anything sensible in less than 20 hours per week, to be honest, in the long run. However, if you're a designer, then you can do designs as a side gig, so a few hours per week. It works. I know designers who have 4 or 5 clients at the same time, just because they do design for one of the clients, and for the other clients, they are just consulting for a few hours per week. So that works in different, let's say, professions in IT than developers. And I mean, I can talk about freelancing for the whole day. If you have access to last year's online talks, then there is actually my talk about freelancing only. I will just say that freelancing, I think, is the best way to get additional cash. I mean, you can get the best income from all of those we talked about earlier, maybe apart from professional level trainings if you're a very well-known trainer. However, also what it gives you is it gives you access to those great projects from most notably US, Silicon Valley, all the startups, more interesting technologies than you might get in your local environment, more interesting ways of working. So freelancing is a great way to open yourself up to the world and also get better salary than you get on your local market. Also, what I like about freelancing with US most notably is that the California time shift is done in such a way that I work my normal job during the day, and then in the evening I can actually hop on meetings with people from California because it's their afternoon. So it works great as a side gig because I work after my kid is asleep, so in the middle of the night. So that's freelancing. If you want to start freelancing, I would advise you to go to your friendly Google search and try to look for one of the many platforms that have arisen in the last recent few years for IT freelancers. I won't be talking about exact names because my company, as I mentioned, is kind of also in the market, so I won't be talking about our competitors per name, but just go to Google. There's loads of pages right now that help with finding freelance job in IT. And the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to types of side projects is what you might think of first, so creating your own business or own application. And this is by far the riskiest one of those we talked about. So it can give you the greatest benefits, especially money-wise, but it has the biggest risk of failure and of you just kind of not getting much from the activity. You have to remember that you first have to have a good idea for a business, and then you have to have all the knowledge when it comes to funding, when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to hiring people, marketing your product, or you have to find people who help you with those areas. So if you have an idea for an application or for a business, write it down, start working on it. You can actually start work on an application by yourself and then just get freelancers, for example, to help with some areas when it gains traction, when it starts to be an MVP, for example. I for sure would have to have a designer that will create a design for my application. I have no eye for design whatsoever. So if you have an idea for a business, start on it, think about it, and then it might, as I said, give you the greatest benefits, and it will give you, even if it fails, it will still give you a lot of good experiences. Okay, so those were the ideas of what you actually might do. So let's talk about the long-term benefits. And again, the first one would be financials, but we won't be talking about the short-term financials because, I mean, it's pretty obvious you can get additional cash from working on the side, of course. But what happens about the long term? Let's talk about the least obvious one, so the open source projects. And there are multiple ways of monetizing your open source project nowadays. If it gains traction, if it has many people who work using this product. One way is what Vue did. So think of it this way: how often do you go to a documentation page of a framework you work with, and then multiply it by thousands of developers or thousands of IT professionals that do the same, and you'll get the idea of the potential for putting ads on a documentation page. So Vue has sponsors who pay for being placed on their documentation page, and that's how they can get money for their open source project. Another way to monetize open source is not like keeping your project open source, but selling your knowledge about it. So think about it this way: if you're a company and you want to implement a tool from open source in your company, then who will you get to help you with this implementation other than the guys who actually wrote the thing? So your code is open source, but you sell your knowledge about it. You sell courses, for example, on the subject, or sell your sell your services to help with the implementation. Another way is keeping your core of your open source library free and letting companies pay for some plugins that you add to it. So the core is free, still everyone can use it, everyone can write their own plugins, but you provide your services for that. So there's a lot of ways to monetize an open source once it gains traction as well. Also, not only in open source, but any of your side projects or businesses can actually give you great benefits. One of examples is Oculus. So if you don't know about it, Oculus is a VR headset. It was created back in 2013 and was actually created as a side project. So the guy who created Oculus worked on it in his garage after hours. When he had the first prototype, he went to Kickstarter. He gathered 10 times more money than he was planning to get for a prototype to send to developers to create software for it. And a year later, he sold the company to Facebook for $2 billion. So I wish all of us here all the best, but probably not any one of us will get such a tremendous success as Oculus does, of course. But this just gives you the idea of how big of a benefit and how much your life can change due to your side projects that you do after hours. Of course, not only those tremendous and very high yield successes can change your long-term financial situation, such as creating an application. Also working on freelancing or courses can as well give you great benefits in long time. So what I'm thinking about here is getting some long-term goals for yourself. For me, it's obtaining financial freedom, so being able to work but not having to work, because I have enough money in investments that they can bring me cash that I can actually spend for my life, or traveling around the world, or sitting in the forest with a book. And if you think about it, if you have a 9-to-5 job or you have a 9-to-5 job plus side projects, then obviously in the second scenario, it will be easier to get to a point where you have enough money to not have to work anymore. So this is what it can give you in the long term. I won't be talking about investments because it's not my area of expertise, but if you want to start doing side projects, if you get this additional money from it, I would highly suggest getting into investment and how to save money and how to budget your money, because it's very easy to overspend and basically spend all of the money you get from the side project, and that's not the greatest idea, although it is tempting, and I know from my own experience, guys. Okay, so those were the financials. But what about other benefits you might get from side projects? So I like looking at side projects as a experimentational ground. So I have my main job where I do have security for my family, financial security. I'm sure that I can pay my bills and everything. And I've got the side projects where I can actually test out new things that I would like to do without having to drop my life security, without having to drop support for my kids' preschool, for example. And I always wanted to work remotely. Right now, it's easy to understand. I mean, it's obvious that you can work for another countries from abroad and work remote, but like 6 or 7 years ago, it wasn't so obvious, before COVID especially. And what I did was, apart from my main job, I started doing some work on the side as a freelancer remotely, and then I was doing more work remotely and less on site. And after a few years, back in 2021, I dropped my Polish work completely and I started working only as a freelancer. So you can say that my side project actually became my main job. And this is what those side projects can give you. You can actually try to see what will work for you, what won't, and then implement it as a full-time work for you, be it a business or be it an application or maybe some freelancing as I did. So they have very high potential of changing your life, of giving you the area to change how you work. Okay, so this is all fine. We have a lot of benefits. Yay, side projects are great, but there are some problems as with everything in life. And the first one is the lack of time and possible exhaustion. So think of it this way. If you work at a 9 to 5 job, you sleep from say midnight till 8, then you brush your teeth, you eat your breakfast, you go to work for 8 hours, then you've got some time for family, leisure, groceries, cooking your dinner, eating your dinner, putting your kid to sleep if you've got kids. And then you've got time for other things such as your hobbies, playing computer games, watching something, or learning new skills, for example. And when you get a side project, it might change something like this. So say goodbye to your hobbies and say goodbye to playing video games and possibly say goodbye to at least 1 hour of your sleep, although in my experience, it's usually much more than 1 hour of sleep, unfortunately. And what this can do to you is you can get to a place where you are totally burned out. And also it might give you other health problems such as back pains, which I have constantly. And in order to avoid that, I would suggest you look at yourself. I mean, you have to look at your body and you have to look at your mental state. And if you start feeling too tired, if you start feeling there is too much strain on you, you have to lower your time you use for your side project and give yourself time to rest. Also, plan your holidays in advance. Don't do things that some people do, that they don't go on any holiday for a year or two. You have to remember and you have to look at your own body because everyone is different. Everyone can have different resiliency to stress, let's say, and resiliency to working a lot. So you have to give yourself time to rest, maybe not take one project after the other, give yourself a week or two of a break. For me, the first 2 years of being a freelancer and working on the side were, I mean, they were great from cash perspective, from skills perspective, but the amount of time I was spending on working was way above what I was able to do. And it takes some time for you to understand your own organism, basically, and your own mentality on how much you can actually work. But it's very important for you to look at yourself and try to understand what you can do, what you can't do. Okay, something that ties up a bit into this is the short-term versus long-term problem. And think of it this way. If you do work 2 jobs right now and not one job, you'll probably get 2 salaries. Yeah, you get a lot of money. However, the time, if you look at this slide, the time where you were actually had time for learning something new, or maybe you had time to do overtime for your main work, obviously paid because I'm against unpaid overtime. But this overtime could actually help you get a promotion in your main work, or learning new skills after hours might actually help you in your main job to get a promotion. And in the long term, it might give you better benefits than just doing some side project. So this short-term gain may actually hurt you in the long term. And in order to avoid it, you have to have a plan for yourself. I mean, you have to know whether you want to, in the long term, become, say, you want to advance in your main job, get promotions and get to the highest possible level. Then you might get less hours as a freelancer and focus more on learning skills that you need in your main job. Or you might want to create your own company. So do less freelancing or do less courses, but work on your own company. Or you want to become a CTO, so maybe not do 6 hours per day of freelancing, but take some time to do a course in management, for example. So you have to have a plan for yourself, and you have to keep your eyes on the prize, just so that you don't stray too far from your road, because you might actually find it to hurt you in the long term. And the third pitfall is the possibility of failure, and that mostly ties to the business and application scenario. And if you come to think of it, if you work a lot, you commit a lot of your time on an application, then it fails, you might see it as a disappointment, as a letdown, and it will hurt your self-confidence, it will hurt your mental state, let's say. But you should treat those failures as a lesson learned, because if you look at the statistics, around 50% of companies die after 3 years since founding, and only 6% survived the first 10 years. So if you create a company today, there is a very, very, very high chance that in 10 years it will be dead. But if you treat it as a lesson learned, you actually can take all those experiences you got there, all those organization skills, and be able to forge it into a better next endeavor, let's say, or put it on your resume and get a better job later on. So if you have an idea for a business, I would still say go for it, try it out, and you might find it will be successful, or it will give you great benefits. Okay, so to sum up, I have always liked having side projects. So be it teaching kids in high school how to do maths or physics, or having another faculty at the university, I always did something on the side, at least two things at the one time. If you are like me, I hope I gave you some ideas on what those side projects might be in the world of IT. If not, I would still suggest try it out. Maybe some of those side projects will be good for you, and you will actually see that they are enjoyable and they are your next big thing. Thank you guys. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions and we have time right now, then ask them right now. If not, you've got my email here. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'll be very happy to engage in a conversation concerning what you think or how you do side projects, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piotr. Thank you for your presentation. We just ran out of time. So thank you very much. If anyone would want to ask Piotr, you can do it under this presentation, or just contact with Piotr via email. And I invite you to evaluate the presentation, get a good score, because presentation was awesome. So I will be see you soon. And thank you very much, Piotr, and have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you, guys.